Just for the sake of argument, allow me to give you a logic test. It's super, super easy. There's only one question on this logic test. Is it logical to pronounce a verdict on something without knowing anything about it? For example, if you're an engineer and you're building a bridge, is it logical for you to assume that a certain size steel beam is going to be strong enough for the bridge without investigating and doing all the math and calculations you need to make sure that that beam is going to be the right size? Is it logical to assume? If you're a scientist and you're studying subatomic particles, is it scientific for you to reach a verdict on a certain subatomic particle without having tested it and experimented and confirmed what's there? Of course, the answer is no. That has nothing to do with logic. It has nothing to do with science. If you are a judge or you're on a jury, is it part of the protocol for you to pronounce a verdict on the defendant without having seen all the evidence from both the prosecution and the defense? Is that how they conduct trials? It is how they conduct trials in many parts of the world, and it's how human beings have conducted trials for tens of thousands of years, no doubt. But there's a reason why we stopped doing that in America. There's a reason why we developed this system called the legal justice system, where we have 12 jurors and a defense team and a prosecution, and they both present the evidence, and the jurors have to sit there and sit through all this boring detail before they reach a verdict. The reason we do it that way is because we kept hanging the wrong person. We still sometimes hang the wrong person, but we've gotten much better at hanging the right person or convicting the right person. So if it makes no sense to pronounce our assumptions and our ignorance and our bias as a fact about something, why do people do it with astrology? You know, there's a Bill Nye the Science Guy video out on YouTube, and he is the poster child of what I'm talking about. I'm assuming that video is still there. Maybe you can find it. Bill Nye the Science Guy uses science to debunk astrology, and his entire argument rests on an astronomical phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes. And he uses that phenomena to debunk all of astrology. And of course, the only problem with that argument that he poses is that Western astrologers know about the precession of the equinoxes. We've known about it ever since astronomers have known about it. We don't fix the tropical zodiac to the fixed stars. We fix the tropical zodiac to the equinoxes. That's a technical way of saying that Bill Nye's argument that debunks astrology is false. The only reason he's saying that is because he knows nothing about astrology. He didn't bother to learn a little bit about it or even fact check his own argument. If he had, he would have realized, oh, all Western astrologers, that's the predominant astrology practiced in all Western countries, has accounted for the precession of the equinoxes. God, it's a mouthful to say that over and over. This is why it is not logical and it is not science to debunk something based on an emotional feeling we have, a gut hunch, a feeling of incredulity. But we've been taught to do that. We've been taught by science and academia to ridicule things that they have pronounced to be unreal. We attack people's character for believing something that mainstream science deems unscientific. And yet, so much of what mainstream science deems unscientific has never been scientifically investigated. There's actually been a ton of science done on paranormal topics that prove the paranormal topics are real, but none of us hear about it because a university would never share that information. They would ridicule it out of hand, just like Bill Nye dismissing all of astrology on a false argument. Science journals would never publish that stuff because it's ridiculous, and we know that without even having to look at it. We already know what's true and what's untrue. We don't need to actually look. That's how smart we are. We're scientists. No, man, that's not science. Being a scientist doesn't mean that every time you burp and fart, that's science. As J. Allen Hynek famously said, he was the lead scientific investigator on the United States Air Force's 3 official investigations into UFOs, Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book. He was the scientist who went out and investigated and who said eventually, UFOs are real. And then he was attacked for that by all the scientists who knew better, who had never spent 20 years investigating case reports. They just knew it couldn't be real because space is so vast. They never looked into it. They called J. Allen Hynek a fool. And J. Allen Hynek said, science is not always what scientists do. Science is not always what scientists do. We have to make that distinction. Being a scientist doesn't mean everything that falls out of your mouth is a gold nugget, stamped approval by science. Is astrology real? Well, I've looked into it. I've studied it deeply for, 30 years or something. What I found is some of it works. Is it real? I don't know. Some of it works. Some of the techniques in astrology are accurate at describing and predicting. Some of it doesn't work. Some of it, I think, is just baggage. Some of it is conflicting. Astrology is still kind of a mess. But some of it works really, really well, to the point that I can talk to a stranger that I've never seen. I can even make a recording. I'm not there to see their facial expression or to see what kind of person they are. I'm not reading their body language or anything. I've never even seen the people. I'm only reading their chart remotely, at recording what I find and sending the recording to them. And I hear back that they're in tears. I hear back that their jaw's fallen open. I had one person tell me, if I had known you would have been able to see me that clearly, I would never have gotten a reading from you. Because I was describing some things that were a little more intimate and sensitive than they wanted me to know about them. Some of astrology works. For you to find out, you would have to investigate for yourself. Guys, that's how everything is. That's how all of reality is. What I recommend doing is going inside, finding all of your assumptions, all of your beliefs that are based on hearsay and assumption that you've never looked into for yourself. You line them up against a wall and you take them out, throw them away. They're of no use to you. If you don't want to investigate, that is totally fine. Here's what you do. Here's how you handle that logically. You just say, I don't know. I've never bothered to look. I can't pronounce a verdict on something I've never looked at carefully for myself. That is logic. That is scientific. I don't know is way more scientific than pronouncing a verdict without having researched it for yourself. This is what separates the logical people from the faith-based people who never bothered to look but feel certain that they know everything already. And yes, this mental malfunction is rampant in academia and science.